Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about redistricting across certain states, specifically in the state of Oregon and the state of Texas, as to what it means with the first proposed map in Texas and the finalized and signed into law congressional map, the first state to actually complete the process and send it out, the state of Oregon, which can give us a general understanding of what states might do in the immediate future and how both parties seem to be reacting to this new redistricting method. Now, the United States has a census every 10 years. People go to your door. Last year, I remember someone came in full PPE and asked us a bunch of information about who was in the household, how many people, how old they were, a lot of information to allow the United States to get a good understanding of how many people were in certain areas and how many electoral votes each individual state would get. It's super important that you answer the census. It's simply just for information for the United States government to understand the populace a little bit better and to track population growth and population change around the nation. So I think it's super important. But what it also does, I think, is just gives us better insight as to the political leanings of certain areas. You will also start to see larger congregations of minority groups in certain areas that you might not have seen before. For example, in the Atlanta suburban region, the Atlanta metro area, a huge influx of minority citizens across that state, across that city, even, in Phoenix, Arizona, and a number of areas, and it gives congressional drawers a better understanding of how a state might actually vote, and thus, with that census information, it's not simply that data that they already have on hand based off previous election results, they can draw new maps. And the state of Oregon, I think, is our first understanding of what a Democratic state might do in response, in essentially pushed forward retaliation against what the GOP is expected to do in our new map. Here is the current map. If you take a look at the congressional map here, some states actually have some pretty interesting leans. For instance, let's take a look at a state such as Florida. Now, the Republican Party has undoubtedly gerrymandered the state of Florida to a point where Democrats will likely not be able to win the majority of House seats there last election or in this upcoming one either. Point is, the Republican Party in a state that is extremely divided and 50-50 nearly every election, the Republican Party has nearly double the seats as the Democratic Party from the state of Florida. In addition, you take a look at a state such as Georgia, recently flipped to the Democratic Party, but there are currently, total of 8 solid Republican districts, not even possible for the Democrats to win. They only have 3, and keep in mind, this state voted for Joe Biden in the presidential election. Take a look at North Carolina, for instance. Again, a Republican gerrymander. In fact, it was so bad at one point that North Carolina had to go to the courts, and the redistricting process was forced onto the state of North Carolina. So previously speaking, there were actually only 3 Democratic representatives. So you can see that around the nation, in a number of states, because there was previous control by a certain political party. For instance, my home state of Maryland is an example for the Democratic Party with their gerrymander. Despite a third of the citizens in the state of Maryland voting for a Republican, there's only 1 Republican representative out of a total of 8. Or Massachusetts, which is a 9-district state that has 0 Republican representatives, hasn't even had a Republican representative since 26 years ago. So you can exactly see that gerrymandering does occur on both sides, but in more of a previous context, it does end up more in the benefit of the Republican Party because they seem to luck out. Even in 2020, they won in every single race where it mattered when it came down to the redistricting process, when it came down to pretty much everything, the independent commissions, whatever it was, the GOP ultimately came out with the upper hand and now have a 100-seat advantage over the Democrats in terms of redistricting. So Oregon, I think, is pretty much the Democratic Party's way of being proactive in this event. And I think that Oregon will be an indicator of what some other Democratic states might try to do across the nation. They officially passed this House map. Actually, it was their second proposal by the Democratic Party. Now, you can actually see that the Republican Party proposed this plan, in which it would allow 2 districts, the first and the third, to be solid for the Democrats, the second district to be solid for the Republicans, and then they would have 3 districts that would deem to be super competitive. The fourth, which would have a Republican lean of 2, the fifth, which would have a Republican lean of 4, and then the sixth, which would have a Democratic lean of 2, which means that in some type of tied scenario, there would be equal representatives of Republicans and Democrats from Oregon. But the Democrats said absolutely not. They actually initially proposed a very much worse plan, I would say, for the GOP, to a point where every single district except for 1 was solid for the Democratic Party. They pretty much split up Portland over here, and they allowed it so that way the 4th district, instead of having a Republican lean of 2, would have a Democrat lean of 9. The 6th district, instead of having a Democrat lean of 2, would have a Democrat lean of 11. And the 5th district, instead of a Republican lead of 4, a Democrat lead of 10. And the 2 Democratic districts would be solid for the Democrats regardless, and they would make Oregon's 2nd district even more Republican. But this is not the one that went through. The one that went through was a little bit of a middle way. This is the new map, and it has been confirmed, passed by the Senate, the House, and signed by the governor. Last night, actually. They had till midnight. And you can see here that this map benefits the Democratic Party. Like I said, they are trying to be proactive, and they're taking advantage of the fact that there is a new district being added. This is the old map. This is what we've been dealing with. Oregon's 2nd district, Republican plus 19. The 4th district, Republican plus 1, but a Democratic incumbent. The 5th district, Democrat plus 4, Democratic incumbent. And then 2 safe Democratic districts. Well, now this new map makes it so there are still 2 safe Democratic districts, and they make the 2nd district extremely Republican, more so than it is now. Currently, it's Republican plus 19, and now it's Republican plus 28. But what the Democrats are trying to do, and what they did do actually, confirmed it, is made the 4th district Democrat plus 9, and the 6th district Democrat plus 7. So less than the initial map that was proposed, but still pretty solid for the Democratic Party, but of course could go to the GOP in a wave year. And that's why I think that this map was drawn in such a way, so that way, not necessarily intentionally, that way Republicans could win it in the future, but that way it wasn't impossible. I think that there is a fine line here between Democrats in which they call out the Republican Party for gerrymandering and then they do it on their own end. But of course, a lot of the times you are going to be seeing the Democratic Party try to fight fire with fire, and considering they have a 100-seat deficit, I see why they're doing this in Oregon. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right to draw districts in a way that it makes it unfair to have equal representation, but that's just the way the political party works. That's just the way that our current electoral system works, and it makes sense that they are doing it. So when I say I understand it, I'm not trying to condone it or say that this is a good move, but politically speaking, I am going to acknowledge I do understand why they're doing this and what the implications are on our congressional map. And then the 5th district, this is really the only competitive one, but it has a partisan lean of D+3. And the Democratic Party absolutely did that with every intention. Now, I am quite surprised that they did not actually follow through with that first map. It would pretty much ensure that in most cases, there would be 5 Democratic districts and 1 Republican one. It seems that in most cases now, if Republicans just have the upper hand narrowly, that it'll be 2 Republicans and 4 Democrats, but singular seats can absolutely change the outcome of elections by pretty significant amounts. In 2020, had just 4 seats gone to the GOP, or 5 seats gone to the GOP away from the Democratic Party, Republicans would have won the majority. So every single seat matters, and I think that the state of Oregon might not necessarily reflect that in terms of the Democratic Party's thinking, but I'm going to show you exactly what they are trying to combat with new maps like the one you are seeing in the state of Oregon. The Texas Republican Party actually just gave us a new idea of what they are trying to do with our new proposed map. Now, that's an article on it, but I'm actually going to click it to show you, because there is a proposed map as to what they want to do. Here's the old map. You can see here that there are plenty of competitive districts. Currently speaking, Democrats hold one of them. They hold the second one. They hold the third one. They hold many of these competitive districts. You can see that Democrats have simply lucked out in that regard. But this new map, this proposed map, what would exactly do? Well, it would keep one of the districts to be even, in fact, to make it more competitive than previously. It would shore up the 34th district into a more Democratic area, the 28th district into a more Democratic area. But the point is that the Republicans are who they are worried about. For instance, the 10th district, the 22nd district, the 2nd district, the 31st district, the 21st district, all, potentially speaking, pickup opportunities for the Democrats that now are safe. That 2nd district with Dan Crenshaw, let's go ahead and see here. 38th district, I guess, would be the new one. But Dan Crenshaw would go from a point of being Republican plus 1 to Republican plus 27. They are intentionally trying to save these GOP incumbents for a reason. The change from old map may make it seem that Democrats are gaining 5 Democratic-leaning seats, but it's removing 5 highly competitive seats, which means that there is only 1 highly competitive seat, meaning that Democrats don't have an opportunity. In the old map, you can see here that based off of the majority, Democrats technically could have gotten the majority of representatives from the state of Texas. That is well within an understandable possibility within some type of Democratic wave year. You can see that these 5 districts here, which are primarily held by Democrats, in which they could win all of them and potentially make inroads on these Republican-leaning districts. Instead of there being, 7, 8 Republican-leaning districts, instead, the new map would propose that there would be 1 Republican-leaning district. one Republican leaning, meaning not safe, the rest would be safe, and one highly competitive one. So while it may seem that Democrats are lucking out with this, they truly are not. This will make it much more difficult for them. And if you take a look here, overall, the median seat, the old map shows the difference between the partisan lean of the state's median district and the state as a whole. The first draft plan, Republican plus 12. That's the one I'm showing you. And the old map, Democrat plus 2.3. Competitiveness, there were 6 out of the 36 seats as competitive. The new map, 1 out of 38. One district. The Republican Party in the state of Texas is trying to ensure that the state remains safe Republican for the foreseeable 10 years. Because they know at some point Texas is going to flip. It is inevitable that Texas turns blue in the immediate future, which is why they are so very much worried, and rightfully so. When you take a look at many of these close races in the 2018 election, a blue wave year, you can see that in many of them, they were very competitive. For instance, in the 25th district, a less than 10-point margin. The 6th district, less than 8 points. You can take a look at the 10th district, which was decided by less than 5. What's to say in another district, less than 5 again? An additional one, you see that the margins end up narrowing up. And the point is, in the 21st district, Chip Roy, who was actually recently shown on national television, talking about how the Republican Party needs to ensure that Democrats can't do anything. Well, he only won by 2.8% in the 2018 election. So when you look at these numbers, or 2.6%, when you look at the close and competitive nature of many of these Texas districts, you ask yourselves, if the Democrats were to have a better year than 2018, could they have won these? And the answer is absolutely yes. But with this new map, it just isn't even in the realm of possibility whatsoever. This new map is intentionally made so that Republicans will win all of these districts regardless of how the state ends up turning, which is why you see a state such as Oregon release their new map, which is finalized now, which gives Democrats an advantage. So what would have been the possibility of winning maybe 10 seats in the state of Texas? You're looking at this map that the Republican Party obviously is trying to go on the offense here and trying to make it so, but Democrats could have won potentially 10 seats here. Well, in the state of Oregon, they're trying to make up for these potentially lost 10 seats now that the GOP could be changing, and pretty much counteract it by having 2 seats to pick up in Oregon that they could surely keep safe, and then have one that they could probably expand upon because of the new added district. But the point is that they are making incremental pushbacks on the Republican Party, but neither is right to do. Obviously, you never want to say you approve of gerrymandering, but you have to understand what is going to happen. And when I said it 6 months ago, that the Republican Party would win back control of the House in 2022, I mean it because of maps like the one in Texas. Because to be completely honest, this Oregon pushback is not going to do much. Changing it so that way you can shore up maybe an additional district at most isn't going to combat the inevitable 60 to 70 seat deficit that the Republican Party is going to put the Democratic Party at. This just makes it more difficult for Democrats to win because Democrats did not win in many of the districts. And in many senses, it's a self-reinforcing cycle. Because maybe not necessarily on the House of Representatives level, because those House districts do not draw their own congressional districts. But when you take a look at the state Senate, when you take a look at the state House, these maps typically are proposed and passed by their own legislatures, or they're put forth by an independent commission that truly isn't independent. And what that means is, Republicans and Democrats will end up drawing districts beneficial to themselves, passing it for themselves, winning re-election, and by the next time they draw the map, again, even more in favor of themselves, and it's a self-reinforcing cycle, because the only thing that could break it is a bill that bans gerrymandering or a Supreme Court decision. If neither of the two happen, which they probably won't given the partisan composition of the Supreme Court, given the partisan nature of our congressional understanding, the Senate filibuster, whatever it is. And I'm not trying to use this as a way to push any type of agenda. I'm just saying that I do truly think that America would be better off if gerrymandering was banned. But obviously, that's not really possible at this point in time, or not something that is likely to pass, even though I think it very well should. But overall, just taking a look at the gerrymandering map here, the Republican Party will have the upper hand by the end of 2022. They will be winning back the House majority, and we will have a House Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, if all goes in favor of the GOP in 2022. Now, of course, there's that possibility that Democrats can retain control of the House, but given our current House map, I honestly don't see it happen. And if Republicans are able to take advantage of many of these situations, take advantage of many of the states that they are going to draw, You can see here in the proposed map. Go to 538.com. You can check out what redistricting looks like in every single state. Many of these states have newly proposed maps, and what they are going to do are make the districts more difficult than ever before for the Democratic Party to win. The same way Democrats are trying to do, but it honestly isn't going to work because Republicans have control over 180 districts in terms of Republican full control, a trifecta. State legislature, governor, whatever it is, they have control. Democrats only have about 80. There is that 100-seat deficit, and Democrats need to acknowledge that, and I think that that's what they're trying to do with moves like the one you see in Oregon. But the point is, 80 seats versus 180, the Republican Party will have the upper hand with gerrymandering across the United States, and they will absolutely utilize it because every political party does. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.